Welcome to the Folktale Project. This is Dan Scholes. Today we're going to pick back up with Raven and the first man and see how the rest of the world was populated. This comes from Clara Kern Bayless's A Treasury of Eskimo Tales, and this is The First Woman. "You will be very lonely by yourself," said Raven to Man one day. "I will make you a companion." He went to a spot some distance from where he had made the animals, and, looking now and then at Man as an artist looks at his model, he made an image very much like Man. He took from the creek some fine water-grass and fastened it onto the back of the head. After the image had dried in his hands, he waved his wings over it, as he had done with all live things, and it came to life, and stood beside Man, a beautiful young woman. "There is a companion for you," cried Raven. "Now come with me to this knoll over here." In those days there were no mountains far or near, and the sun never ceased to shine brightly. No rain ever fell and no winds blew. When they came to the knoll, Raven found a patch of long dry moss and showed the pair how to make a bed in it, and they slept very warmly. Raven drew down his mask and slept nearby in the form of a bird. Awakening before the others, Raven went to the creek and made 3 pairs of fishes, sticklebacks, graylings, and blackfish. When they were swimming about in the water, he called to Man, "Come and see what I've made." When Man saw the sticklebacks swimming up the stream with a wriggling motion, he was so surprised that he raised his hands suddenly, and the fish darted away. "Look at these graylings," said Raven. "They will be found in clear mountain streams, while the sticklebacks are already on their way to the sea. Both are good for food, so whether you live beside the water or in the upland, you may find plenty to eat." He looked about, and thought there was nothing on the land as lively as the fish in the water, so he made the shrew mice, for he said, "They will skip about and enliven the ground, and prevent it from looking dead and barren, even if they're not good for food." He kept on for several days making other animals, more fishes, and a few ground birds, for as yet there were no trees for birds to alight in. Every time he made anything, he explained to Man what it was and what it would do. After this, he flew away to the sky and was gone 4 days, when he returned bringing a salmon for Man and his wife. He thought that the ponds and lakes seemed silent and lonely, so he made insects to fly over their surfaces, and muskrats and beavers to swim about near their borders. At that time the mosquito did not bite Man as it does now, and he said to Man, "I made these flying creatures to enliven the world and make it cheerful. The skin of this muskrat you are to use for clothing. The beaver is very cunning, and only good hunters can catch it. It will live in the streams and build strong houses, and you must follow its example and build a house." When a child was born, Raven and Man took it to the creek and rubbed it with clay, and carried it back to their stopping place on the knoll. The next morning the child was running about, pulling up grass and other plants which Raven had caused to grow nearby. On the 3rd day, the child became a full-grown man. Raven one day went to the creek and made a bear, and gave it life, but he jumped aside very quickly when the bear stood up and looked fiercely about. He had thought there ought to be some animal of which Man would be afraid, and now he was almost afraid of the bear himself. "You had better keep away from that animal," he said. "It is very fierce, and will tear you to pieces if you disturb it." He made various kinds of seals, and said to Man, "You are to eat these, and then to take their skin for clothing. Cut some of the skins into strips and make snares to catch deer, but you must not snare deer yet. Wait until they are more numerous." By and by, another child was born, and the man and woman rubbed it with clay as Raven had taught them to do, and the next day the little girl walked about. On the 3rd day, she was a full-grown woman, for in those days people grew up very fast, so that the earth would be peopled. And that is the Eskimo Tale of the First Woman. In it we see Raven rounding out the humans a bit with a woman, the birth of 2 children, and of course more food for them to hunt and eat. And probably the very first and only time we will see insects being described as brought about to enliven the world and make it cheerful. This is Dan Schulz for the Folktale Project. Don't forget that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Overcast, anywhere you like to get your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at Folktale Project. You can find us on Auto Radio, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, anywhere you like to listen. And you can always head over to folktaleproject.com, where you'll find a new story waiting for you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you so much for listening.